It certainly played a big role. I mean, to some extent, we've seen it worldwide, where obviously automation's been a big role. Anything that's kind of low cost and low margin, a lot of countries exported that type of stuff. For example, textile manufacturing. So the dollar's not to blame for every aspect of it. But if you look at the United States, it happened a lot more rapidly and thoroughly than many of our developed peers. And so, for example, in addition to exporting our cheap manufacturing, we also export a lot of our advanced manufacturing, whereas you see countries like Germany or Japan maintained a lot of their advanced manufacturing. And this comes down to, when every country needs dollars, as you point out, it basically strengthens the dollar. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it stays strong all the time. We've actually had the dollar deteriorate against many other currencies because we have these underlying imbalances continuing to grow. But it means that any given one time, if you have the whole world demands dollars, basically it's just all this extra demand. And so we end up exporting dollars to essentially meet that demand. There's an artificial amount of extra demand for the dollar. And so most countries, when their currency gets too overvalued, they start to get a trade imbalance. They get a trade deficit, and that eventually normalizes. Eventually, their exports become uncompetitive, and they have a recession, and then the markets eventually kind of sort that out. Same thing if their currency gets too weak, unless there's excessive persistent manipulation, eventually it kind of goes back to that median point. But the United States, because of the system we constructed, has been able to maintain a multi-decade, very large trade deficit longer than pretty much any other country out there. And so we've basically had the imbalances build up more and more without allowing that kind of natural error correction or mean reversion to occur. And that's, again, it's by design. And so the major beneficiaries of the system are those, close to the money printer. So if you work in DC, not just the politicians, but the lobbyists and all the ways to influence DC, the infrastructure around DC essentially, as well as Wall Street, as well as very, very high margin businesses, like, for example, information technology, healthcare, right? A lot of that, if you work in those types of fields, you did very, very well. If you worked in fields that make things, right? So you manufacture, or if you work in jobs that are associated with that. So, for example, there are, if you were working at a restaurant that served, upstate New York or somewhere else, somewhere in the Midwest, for example, a lot of that was deindustrialized. And so it wasn't just manufacturing jobs. It was all sorts of areas in the region. So you can kind of almost characterize it by industry as well as by region. Essentially, the coast benefited more or less at the cost of the center of the country. And so those imbalances have grown over time, and it can be very hard to pinpoint for a lot of people, where those causes are. They know that there's wealth concentration, but they don't know why. And just, so again, some of this is global. But for example, if you look at wealth concentration in the United States compared to many other developed countries, the United States is near the top of the list in terms of wealth concentration, in part because we've had these more deliberate policies that kind of gutted our working class and middle class type of jobs at the expense of kind of amplifying some of those really high-end jobs, or the ones that kind of control the capital.
What would the impact of this be if the petrodollar was to collapse? What would the impact be for the US?
Well, I mean, I think there'd be multiple issues. So one, there's two layers of it. There's medium exchange and store value. So if they start to do medium exchange outside of the dollar and the SWIFT system, right, then that reduces the United States' sanctionability and essentially hegemon status.
Well, so the Russia-India deal was in response to sanctions to certain Russians as well.
Yes, but one thing is so a lot of this has been building for a while. So, for example, there was a Bloomberg article back in 2019 that I highlighted in my 2020 petrodollar article that showed that Russia and India have been already going along that path. They basically agreed to increase their trade and to start pricing it outside of dollars. And so we actually already saw that building up ahead of time. And now, of course, there are certain catalysts like we're seeing today that can accelerate that. So it's not like it just went from 0 to 100 this month. This has been building and growing for a while, and it's already happening along the spectrum. And so Russia's kind of at the heart of the de-dollarization in the sense that, they're a large oil provider, so that impacts the petrodollar system. And they have massive trade with Europe, China, India, and other countries. And so because they've been aggressively de-dollarizing, the fact that these other peers go along with it, many of them either neutrally or that they also have an interest in doing it as well, like China, for example, they de-dollarize. Now, there's two layers of it. So one is the medium exchange, how they actually make the payments, because that can mean that the U.S. is unable to block them from trading. If they trade within a dollar-based system, the United States can block two countries from trading that have nothing to do with the United States, which is kind of crazy if you think about it.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.